Hello knockouts, Tonya Tko here, and I'm making this video to talk about the displacement, to give all of the details that I can about the displacement, what led up to it, what happened after it, and how I got out of it, as well as doing an FAQ at the end with questions that people have asked over time and have also submitted. So I want to just do all of that. This is my first time coming out and officially talking about the displacement. You know, there were a lot of things that took place and a lot of things that people said, a lot of rumors, untrue things, a lot of attacks, etc. And during the displacement, I felt that my energy was best served keeping myself safe, keeping myself sane, and doing the things that I needed to do to not have it perpetuate any longer than it needed to. And so I'm making this video, and I know that the people who love Tonya TKO and have always loved Tonya TKO don't feel that this video is necessary. And you know, there's a saying that goes, those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter. And so I know that the people who love me, they don't need this video. For me, what I would like to do is talk about it once and for all, leave this video up, and for anybody who's still coming 2 years later, yes, 2 years later, talking about it and still trying to attack me, I just want to refer them to the video and just move on. Speaking of moving on, I am at this point, I'm in a really good place mentally, physically, psychologically, etc. And I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to put this behind me, and I'm ready to just continue to I feel like this is something that I need to do as a part of my healing process. And so I feel like this is the last component. I learned a really huge lesson this past week, and it's like life will continue to bring different situations into your life. And if you're really paying attention, really looking inward and doing the internal work, you'll be able to pay attention to what life is telling you and learn your lessons, take your lumps, learn your lessons, and move forward. And where it is that I am right now, I'm so tremendously interested in moving forward. And what I'm also going to do is, because I'm making this video, putting it out there, and I'd like to go back through all of my videos and bring back all of my archives back to YouTube. And, you know, when I took them down, I felt like I'm not going to be a blogger anymore. That the videos that I do make are going to be professional videos. They're going to be professionally edited, etc. And I realized in my heart of hearts, I'm a vlogger. And even though I left YouTube, it's like, you know how water travels the path of least resistance? I left YouTube, but then I ended up on Facebook vlogging because it's just, I don't know, at this point it's in my nature, and vlogging is, oh, you know what? I'll say this and then I'm going to jump into the whole story. I took notes just so we could stay on point. I'll say this, right? Our lives unfold. And you guys have had the opportunity to see these different things unfolding in my life. And it's like sometimes we don't really have an answer and understanding for why things are the way that they are, why we are the way that we are. I know that there are people who receive a lot of help and healing from my videos, and I know that I have this internal, like it's a I don't know, it's like a driving force to create content, to give lessons, to teach, to create seminars and webinars and write books. I feel like there's this driving force. And when we get to the FAQs, when I answer the question, why didn't I get a job? I'm going to answer that in the FAQs. So stay tuned at the latter part of the video for that. I feel like the sun is going to get real hot. Let me move forward just a little bit. Oops. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's jump into it. All right. I feel like the camera is not. Okay. All right, there we go. In 2014, I closed my business. And 2014, in about August 2014, I closed my business. I came out to California for the first time to just kind of have a look around. I had a bunch of meetings when I was out here, and things looked really promising. So I decided to come back in the latter part of the year. I went back to New York. I sold, gave away, or threw away all of my stuff. I closed my business because, and that's one of the FAQ questions. I wasn't happy. I was alive, but I wasn't living, and like I said, this internal driving force, my passion is teaching, and my passion is helping people live to the greatest version of themselves, healing from the inside, and using topical solutions to clear your skin from the outside. I love being able to help people in that way. However, my dream, my passion is really helping people heal from the inside. So let's go forward. 2000, end of 2014, I came back to California and I had my car shipped out here. And I mean, you guys saw videos of me driving around end of 2014 in California. And when I closed my business, I had enough money to last me a year maintaining my lifestyle. When I came back to California, the like all of the meetings and stuff, like I had a meeting at Fox, I had all of these different meetings, and I was on the radio at Sunset Gower out here. I was on a bunch of different shows, but when I came back the second time, it was really kind of dead. And I realized that if I continued going along that path, I would run out of money. I had enough money for a year. So I was like, you know what? Let me go someplace really cheap and write my books. That way I can come back into the US with my books and I can just go forward from there. All right. So 2015, I left California. You guys remember the video that I did um, right around the time that I did those videos, vagina pump and dump, etc. So anyway, so end of 2014, beginning of 2015, I decided that I was gonna leave and go someplace really cheap and very beautiful so I could just relax and just write my books. I went to Guatemala because you guys know I got robbed my first day on the ground. Then it led me going south, trying to find a safe place that I could just stay and write. I ended up down in Buenos Aires and I stayed there for a little while trying to get the books out, but it was just one thing after another. And I realized that there's a correlation between how cheap a country is and their desperation for money. So it's not that the country is really cheap, it's that the people in that country, that they're economically depressed, and being in an economically depressed area, different things start to ensue, like robberies, desperation, people having a hard time feeding their families, people feeding off of tourists, people attacking tourists, robbing tourists, all that type of stuff. So anyway, so I came back into the country after 8 months away trying to write this book with no book written. I flew back into New York and I decided that I would head back to LA. My car was in LA. There was a woman who was watching my car. We were cool and we maintained our coolness over the time that I was gone. But it had been a few months, quite almost a year since my car had been with her. I decided to come back into LA and continued to follow and pursue this dream. She said I could stay with her for a few weeks, a few months until I found someplace else to stay, and then I would just move into my own place and go forward from there. When I was in the air, apparently I'd been receiving messages because when I landed and I turned on my phone, I'd gotten all of these notifications from my bank, from PayPal, from everywhere, from any place that I had money. New York State had levied my bank accounts and took everything out of it. I landed with no money. And you know what? I didn't get this in the FAQ. I didn't get this question in the FAQ, but it just came to me just now. There were some people who were saying that the tax offices don't do that. Apparently, I didn't close my business the right way. And there were people during the displacement that were like, "Oh, tax offices don't do that. They will never put you in a position where you don't have money." The rules are different for businesses. The rules are different for businesses. And this was a learning lesson that I needed, to not keep all of my money in business accounts, not have only one business entity. Since then, I've diversified and I've gotten a lot of different entities to protect myself. But nonetheless, the rules are different when it comes to businesses, and that's how it happened. They levied my accounts, put a lien on it, took everything out. I landed with nothing. I was in this woman's house, and things started to get a little strange after a few weeks. And this is a person who lives in the real world just like the rest of us. And so I'm not going to say too much about it, but I will say this, and I'm going to be honest. People who self-medicate with alcohol and drugs. I'll just say marijuana because I don't want it to sound kind of, more than what it is. People who self-medicate with alcohol and marijuana, when those things run out, they can be completely different people than the people that you know on those substances. And that's all I'll say about that until I get to that portion if I feel like saying more. So anyway, you know what? I will say this about myself. I'll say this about myself, right? I am a lifetime entrepreneur. I'm a lifetime entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 13. I would sell like little sweets to police officers and little remade, handmade stuff from the dollar store. And then in high school, I sold, I had like a little candy store out of my locker. After college, I owned vending machines and I was able to travel the world, and I had someone who was back at home who would stock the machines, collect the money, etc. The money got a little funny after a few months of me being away. You know how you're used to getting a certain amount or whatever. But so I came back in. I actually did some business stuff in Japan, selling music on consignment. And then because like I would sell music on consignment to these hip hop stores. And then it led to me designing flyers for these hip hop stores. When I came back into the US, I sold my vending machines. I went to school to become a graphic designer, and then I became a graphic designer. And my specialty was making smaller businesses look large. I went to Nevis and I started working for the banks out there and shipping companies. So I ended up moving up the ranks out there. Caribbean culture is really laid back, and with me being a New Yorker and also having the skills that I had, I was able to ascend pretty quickly. And so what I would do is I would work remotely. So I would do graphic design and I would work for my clients, and I would travel all throughout I would travel throughout the world. I ended up getting some big contracts like with American Airlines and DHL and the banks out there. And so that like there were people who would always wonder how it was that I was able to travel. And I was able to travel because wherever I had internet connection and my computer, I could just design, upload my files, send them to my clients. And when you have clients like that who send you consistent work, you don't have to go out searching for new clients. You just continue to service the clients that you do have. So let's see what else. Oh, when I was this was in 2007. I was in Italy at the time. This was when I went on this huge Middle Eastern tour, and then I ended up going in through Greece, and I came around through Italy. When I was in Italy, I remember I walked into this coffee shop, and there was this woman that was like, "Oh, bambino," and I was like, "What?" And I didn't know what she was talking about, but apparently I'd begun to look pregnant, like my abdomen was distended. And when I came back into the United States, it turned out that I had these really huge tumors in my uterus. I went and I had surgery on that. It was supposed to be a 3-hour surgery. It ended up being 12 hours. I was hemorrhaging afterwards. And this is when I had my near death experience. And it was after my near death experience that, and I, you know what, and I actually would love to write a book one day just about my near death experience alone and what happened to me in that realm where I was neither here, there, or anywhere, right? But then anyway, but when I came out of my near death experience, I was different. I like the stuff that seemed important before didn't really seem important anymore. Like the things that had troubled me before, the way that I'd lived my life before, I realized that there was a lot more to life than I previously thought, and I felt this compelling to kind of just tap people on the shoulders to wake them up. And that's how I got on YouTube. It's a little bit less sophisticated than that, but just one day I turned on my camera and I became Tonya TKO. You know, you know what? I'll tell you guys this secret in this video, and you'll never say that you ever heard me say this anyplace else. But it's so odd. Like when I was in Japan and I had like the vending machines and I was over there, I created this email address. And it was an email address just for my friends in Tokyo. And when I created my YouTube account, apparently that email address was associated with YouTube or whatever. And at that time, your YouTube name became what your email address was. And my YouTube name became Tonya TKO. And the TKO on it, I hate that I'm saying this in public in this video, but the TKO on it was actually for Tokyo. But after I got online, like I didn't even know what my name was on YouTube when I first got on there. But when I got on there, apparently that's what my name was, and that's what people started calling me. And then one day someone asked me, why do they call you Tonya TKO? And I was like, because I'm a knockout. And then it just became that. And you know, it's really funny. It's so funny. You know what? I was going to go into another tangent, but I'll leave that alone. I'll leave that alone. I'll leave that alone. But nonetheless, so let me move on. Let me move on down the list. Okay, so um, after I became Tonya TKO and I was making videos, you know, I did that video in the gold bathing suit showing people how I got rid of my stretch marks, etc. And then TKO Skin was born. I was actually still doing graphic design at the time when TKO Skin was born. And my clients were so sad when I stopped working with them because my work is really good. Like the people who know me from TKO Skin, I transferred my graphic design skills into TKO Skin, and I still use my graphic design skills now to make banners and stuff for myself on Facebook and YouTube, etc., to create my logos and my branding, etc. I mean, you know, you can't take the skill out once the skill is in there. But nonetheless, so let's see. So TKO Skin became the largest business I had ever had. I had 3 employees. We started doing coast to coast trade shows and in different cities. And it got to the point that TKO Skin was large enough that I was going to buy a factory. I don't know if you guys remember that. I was going to buy a factory in Texas, as a matter of fact. And I really did some soul searching. And I realized that I wasn't happy. I felt this internal calling, and I made a lot of videos at the time when I was considering closing my. The sun is so hot. Let me move again. All right. Okay. Oops. Sorry about that. That's my neighbor's property. I made a lot of videos at the time, just talking about this song that I felt that I didn't want to die. I didn't want that song to die still inside of me. And closing TKO Skin was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. It was one of the hardest things that I ever did because I had that business for 5 years, and who it is that I knew of myself, what it is that I become, and also my father. He gave so much. I'm gonna get emotional if I start even talking about it, but my father gave so much. He gave so much of his time. He built my equipment. He volunteered. He came with me. All right, no, we're not gonna get emotional. We're not gonna get emotional. We're not. My father, he came with me to my expos whenever I had an expo, even coast to coast. Whenever I had an expo, my dad was there. He worked with me. He pressed soap with me. He invented my soap press. He was just such a tremendous support to me. And when I closed my business, I thought about all the people who volunteered and who gave so much and who worked with me at the expos and who depended on my product. I thought about all of those people. And I still had to make the decision which was right for me as a human being. And so I closed the business and I went off in pursuit of this dream. There's some people who may not understand why I closed my business, but you know, when you have a near-death experience like I've had, and you realize how fleeting life is, you know that you have to do whatever it is that you need to do to live a life well spent on this earth, to give of your life hours, give of your life days, a day of your life in exchange for the activities of that day. You know how precious that is. My mother died when she was 41. She still had her keys. She had her keys in her pocket. She thought she was coming back home. And the thing is, we never know when we go out. We never know whether we're coming back or how we're coming back. And I decided to close my business. That was 2014. And I have to think now that we're in 2018. If I would have known, I'm trying not to let any tears fall down. I don't want to cry. If I would have known that closing my business would have led to the displacement, if I, if I would have known that closing my business would have led to the displacement and the vitriol and the brouhaha and all the ruckus and people turning their back on me and all this other stuff. Oh, speaking of which, my friend the bear, some of you from 2008 will remember the bear. He used to come on the shows with me and he would talk, etc. He was the one that I had lent money to. I lent a few $1,000s to him. We had been friends for, at that, we'd been friends from 2005 until, when was that? 2005 till 2015, 2016 when I became displaced. 11 years. 11 years. And when I needed him, he decided that not paying me back the money was more important than our friendship. And so, you know, it was like, I don't know how many of you out there have ever lost a close friend, right? But losing the bear as a friend, it hurt in a way that I can't describe. So when I was living in my car, I was mourning the loss of this friendship, somebody who I considered my best friend. And there are people who ask whether or not he and I were romantic and this, but no, I lent him the money because his girlfriend was pregnant and he was out of work. But he had since gone back to work and he kept saying that he would pay me back the money, he would pay me back the money. And so, you know, I'm going all over the place. And I'll finish up that point and then I'll get back into my notes, right? He said that he would pay me back the money. He would pay me back the money when I was at the woman's house who was self-medicating. And he stopped answering my phone calls. I really, you know how I remember reading this statement that was like, as long as people owe me money, I could never be broke or something like that. I read this statement. That's not true. It's not true. I thought that if I were in my time of need that he would show up, but I learned in that situation, just like I learned when I was sick. Sometimes people, it's like you never really know what a person is capable of until they show you that they're capable of it. And I would have thought that of him. Never would have thought that of him. But anyway, let me go back to my notes. Oh, I jumped all over the place and I have to figure out where I'm at. So, so the question that I was asking before I went off into that story is, if I would have known, if I would have known that I would have gone through the displacement and gone through all of that, would I have still done it? And I would say that, you know what, the lessons were hard and it was painful, but life is an interesting thing in that it will it will continue, life will continue to talk to you. And if you can't hear what it's saying, it will strip away the things in the way. Life will show you what it is that you came into this lifetime to learn. Because I'll say this, I was raised in a two-parent household. My mother got married when she was 20. And I saw from being raised in this household what were some of the pitfalls of trying to navigate through your own autonomy and your own personal freedoms without having money to make the decisions that you want to make for yourself. So along the way, I learned that money equals power, money equals freedom, money equals control over your life and yourself, and also money equals your worth. I'm sure many of you can tell my attitudes about money and being a responsible adult from some of the videos that I've made about dating bums, dating while you're broke, not having yourself together, etc., etc. So somewhere along the lines, I made a promise to myself when I was a child that I would always have money, that that I would be able to take care of myself, that I would never be broke. And I have always had money. I have always made sure that I've had enough money, that I've been abundant. I've always made sure of that. And recently, you know what, I'll talk about that in a second. I want to really make this point. And so for the most part, my goal has always been, I've had an away from goal, running away from being broke, running away from being powerless. And when you have an away from goal, that goal is always attached to your actions. It's like the parachute on your back, because it's always a part of the equation between the denominator, or whatever you want to call it, and the equal sign. It's inside the equation. I do this because I don't want to be this. It's an away from goal, and so it's always attached to you. And when you have a goal like that that's attached to you, you can never run away from it. You can never run away from being broke, because broke is the wind behind your back. And so, and all of this is just a fuller picture of who it is that I am, how the displacement happened, and why it perpetuated for so long. And so if you think about an away from goal and how it's attached to you, right? When you think about how you celebrate, for the people, like let's say for an example, your away from goal is I want to move away from being fat, or I want to move away from being broke. The people who have the away from goal from being fat, you'll notice that when they go to celebrate, they'll celebrate by participating in the very thing that brings them closer to what it is that they say that they're running away from. Like let's say for example, you go to celebrate and you go out and you buy yourself a big ice cream or cake, or a stupendous amount of waffle syrup, chicken and ice cream and whipped cream and all this other stuff. You go out and you buy some extremely fattening meal, some fries with cheese sauce and all of that. And the people who have the away from goal, away from being broke, when they go out to celebrate, they go out and they spend an exorbitant amount of money. So it's like while this thing is still attached to us psychologically, it's still in the back of our minds. And so our celebration actually brings us closer to that we say that we're running away from. And so this is why I urge all of us to have going toward goals. Go towards health instead of running away from obesity. Go towards abundance instead of running away from being broke. And so when I landed in California and I didn't have money, I was first of all, I didn't think that it was going to go down like that when my boy had my back, or thought he had my back. And I was ashamed. I had always correlated my worth with my wealth. I'd always correlated my worth with my ability to take care of myself. I felt like I had failed. My father had just retired. He'd left the country and was now living in Nevis. And I didn't call my family. I didn't call the people who were closest to me. I stayed in my car alone and ashamed. trying to deal with it by myself, trying to get out of the situation, trying to do something, trying to do something. And the lesson that I learned recently, and part of the reason that I'm making this video and I'm moving on from it, is I've come to the understanding and the realization that not having money doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you're a loser. It doesn't mean that you've lost at life. It doesn't mean any of those things. Money is a measure of fiat, of liquid or static fiat currency. And it's only that. It doesn't measure how good you are as a person, how good you are as a business person. It's just merely information. And I have had to come to the realization, but there were a lot more things that had to happen to me for me to finally have this epiphany, that I wasn't bad for being in need. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday in the video where I told you guys that I was going to come forward. I know that race has a large amount to do with this, because we as Black Americans, Black people, I think Black people in general in many different parts feel this way. Like, you can't show weakness, you can't be in need, you can't not have it all figured out. You can't, and especially as a Black woman, we are, like, for example, if I were any other race of woman, you would not have seen the men of my own race coming out to attack me for being in need. If I were Asian, maybe even other cultures, because I couldn't even imagine a Latina, a Hispanic woman with other Hispanic men coming out. If I were Asian men, I'm talking about China Asia and India Asia. Can you imagine an Indian man being like, F you, bitch, you this, that, and then threatening to attack that woman for being in need? So while I was living in my car, I had people attacking me verbally, threatening to attack me physically. Men, well, a man threatened to attack me physically. And I'm mourning this friendship. I'm living in my car. I'm at the lowest place that I am in my life. And instead of being like, oh, this woman is in need, instead people are like, oh, this is a scam. Oh, she's scamming. And somebody made the statement yesterday that they felt that it was a scam, that people probably felt it was a scam because there were so many other people who were exploiting their fan base for financial gain. Come on. It's like, this stuff just doesn't make sense. We have to think about this logically. This is part of the reason that I never talked about this publicly, because I'm like, we have to be able to use our logic to make sense of what it is that we're saying. And I know that people who, I'm getting off my points, but I'll say this. I made videos, I did lessons, thousands of hours of videos. I had more than 900 videos, thousands of hours of videos for 8 years. 8 years. And then I said, listen, if my videos have ever helped you, please, if you can, please give something. That's the scam. And the thing about it is that people erred on the side of attack. It's like, I live in the real world, like everybody else. It's like, the only people who were saying that I was scamming were people who didn't know me personally. I went to school, high school, all this stuff. There were people who have my phone number. Those people, where was the expose from the people who really knew me? So it was like, many of you listened to people who had vendettas. One guy who attempted to get with me years before, how many years before? A year or two before, he had attempted to get with me, and I was not interested in him. And then he comes out with this whole story, calling me all types of B's and stuff, saying that I'm lying, and you all believe this fool who has a history of hatred towards Black women. And then there was another main guy. And you know what? I feel sorry for anybody. My heart goes out in compassion for anybody who believed that foolishness, because it really wasn't about me. It was like, there was something going on inside of you that you decided that you would see a person in need, see a person who's down and out, see not who has had a track record of almost a decade of giving without asking anything in return, giving freely and abundantly. And when that person asked for help in return, there were people who turned on her. It's too silly. It's too silly. So I'll say this. How did I end up living in my car? I the woman who I was staying with, like I said, it got kind of funny after about 3 weeks. Now, I'd never been broke. And I'll say this, remember when I said like life will strip things away from you? I would have never understood this thing about myself that I thought that I was bad without money or failed or whatever. I would have never understood that had I not had money. Not unless that had been stripped and all of this other stuff taken away, and then what's left in the aftermath. And I was able to really truly see myself in some of my philosophies, some of my limiting beliefs. And so I was staying with her, and so I had, you guys know, I had an Amex card, Amex business card, and I had points. And there were things that I needed from Amazon that I was buying that I needed with my Amex points. And she started counting my supposed money. And things just got really fishy. She thought that she actually came to me and said that if it were her and she had Amex points or whatever, that she would give them, that she would be sharing them with other people. And I was like, you know what? I don't know when I'm going to, like, I was buying stuff that I needed to, like, try to produce videos out here. Like, I bought my lights and a tripod and stuff like that and things because I wanted to make a cookbook. So I was getting, like, some ingredients and stuff to make the cookbook together because I was like, I got to get this together. My mind works entrepreneurially. Like I said, I'm a lifetime entrepreneur. So I'm, like, thinking about the stuff that I need to get together. And she, I guess, I don't know, but she could have had a conversation with me. And when I explained to her, these are Amex points, she then was like, oh, if I had a credit card to use, I'd be like, here. And I'm like, it's not a credit card. These are, but nonetheless, she said that she thought I was selfish, and she told me that in 2 weeks or the end of the month or whatever, that she gave me about 2 or 3 weeks that she wanted me to leave. And I was like, that's fine. But she told me this, I had gone to a YouTube class that day. And the class was 3 days long, and I needed to go in the morning. So when the morning came, after she told me that she wanted me to leave in 2 weeks or whatever, and she started acting funny and stuff, I decided that I was just going to put my stuff inside my car. I needed to be at the YouTube space the next morning anyway. I put all of my stuff inside the car because I didn't trust it there. I didn't trust leaving it behind. I put all my stuff in the car. And when I went to my class at the YouTube thing afterwards, I was asking people if they knew of where and how I could stay or Airbnb or whatever. And nobody knew of anything. LA is a really strange place. It's very expensive out here. And I needed to be at the YouTube space the next morning. So the very first thing that I did, well, not the very first thing, the very first night, I there was some construction around the corner from the YouTube space. So I went to the security guy who was in the booth, and I said, "Listen, I'm gonna sleep in my car right here. I'm gonna get up in the morning. I just, I need to be at this place in the morning. I'm gonna sleep right here. If you could just look out for me, that would be great." And so I slept in my car that first night. I really didn't have a plan. I really didn't know what was going to happen. I really didn't think that my friend wasn't going to give me the money that he owed me. And so the first night was just the first night. And then the second day after the classes were over and after all was said and done, I really didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to go. I didn't have money. I didn't know what to do. And so I stayed in my car again for the next night. And I was at the YouTube, and I was going back and forth to the YouTube space. And on the Sundays, the YouTube space is closed. So I went to Starbucks. And there was a guy there who actually recognized me from my videos, and we got to talking. Like I said, LA is a strange place, and this guy happened to be somebody who was living in his car. So weird. There's a lot of people here that are just subsisting, not really making ends meet. And it's like what we think of, like there are people who were laughing. What we think of as homelessness, sleeping on the streets, that's a whole different scenario. you know There are many people out here who are living in their cars, who are living from couch to couch, many people. But nonetheless, so this guy told me about there's this Best Buy down in Playa Vista, and he told me that sometimes he sleeps on the top of the parking deck because it's quiet up there, et cetera, et cetera. And he told me he has a gym membership because like the YouTube space has like it has a bathroom and a shower there, like in the dressing room. And I was not able to use their dressing room. I was washing up in the bathroom at Starbucks. And I met this guy. He said that he is a membership to the gym. It's cheap. That's how he does it. And so that's how it began. I got a membership to the gym. I would shower there. I would go to the Starbucks on Sundays and the YouTube space every day. And what was I doing at the YouTube space in the very beginning? I don't even know because it was 18 days or it was 18 days. The 18th of February is when I came out and I made that video. But I was just going to the YouTube space every day, just editing old footage, just trying to keep putting one foot in front of the other, trying to be positive, trying to just make sense of this whole situation. It was new and I didn't know what I was doing or what it was going to take to get to where I needed to be. So nonetheless, so one day I was on the roof deck of the Best Buy. It was the morning time. And there were some sounds outside of my car. And I was afraid. I was really afraid. Like the light, it was like motion sensor. The light had come on. There were sounds outside of my car. And I was frightened. I was, I was like, you know what? It dawned on me. I'm a woman. I'm out here by myself. I'm on this parking deck. If something happened to me, how would anyone know? And so it was like a few days before that I had spoken with an associate of mine, and she asked me how I was doing. For some reason she could tell something was up, and I told her what was going on, and she was like, you know what, tell people, let people know, people would want to help. And still I couldn't move myself to do it. I was embarrassed, I was ashamed of myself, and I stayed to myself in my suffering. And that morning when I was frightened, I turned on my camera and I made a video and I asked for help. And that day changed everything. I asked for help and there were people who helped me. I raised $12,000 in 8 days. There were people who came out, people who shared the video, and people who also latched onto the video and decided to make it their life's mission to expose, to berate and belittle, etc. And at the time, you know what? Let's move. I'll say this, right? At the time, there was something wrong inside. And I don't want to say something wrong, but for some reason, I had a hard time receiving, right? Okay. I had a hard time receiving. I had a hard time. Let me move my other neighbor on the other side. Okay. There's a funny thing. There's a funny thing about being where I was emotionally. There's a funny thing about that. I had a hard time receiving, and there's so many of us out there who have a hard time not only asking for help, but graciously accepting and receiving help. So even when when people came out in the outpour to help me and they sent me money, etc., there was a part of me, it was like I needed the money. But with each dollar that came in, I felt like a little part of me died with each dollar. I don't know how else to explain it, but I was like, I felt it was like the money was a blessing and an insult at the same time. And I had a hard time accepting, like, even after all of the money came in, I didn't even withdraw the money. I kept trying to do it on my own. I kept trying to find a way to do it on my own. And I just, I don't know. I couldn't accept it. And when it got to the point where I had no choice but to, withdraw it because people started reporting me to GoFundMe and it was just so ridiculous. But I withdrew it and I held on to it and I kept trying to find another way. I tried to find a way to make myself worthy of the money. So I produced a daily show, The Displacement of the Dream Diaries. I wanted to give people something back in exchange for the money. I didn't want to receive it for nothing, but nonetheless, so oh man, just thinking back to all of that stuff, it brings up so much emotion for me. But nonetheless, so anyway, so after I got the money, I was like, you know what? The last thing that I wanted to do was to ever ask again. So what I decided that I was going to do is I was going to, with my entrepreneurial mind, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this money and I'm going to be able to turn this money into more money. Not more money, but be able to sustain myself. So I decided that I was going to find an Airbnb. I was going to find I was going to rent a home that I could turn into an Airbnb. But then that was risky because, I had to get I had to get a homeowner that was on board with me doing that. And I had to rent a place that was big enough to be able to pay for my stay. So I needed to get a place that was 3 or 4 bedrooms so that I could Airbnb out the other 3 bedrooms to be able to pay for the entire house. The houses were expensive. It was risky because it would have taken the whole $12,000 just in the down payment, and then I'd have to make sure that I stay. Well, first of all, I would have needed to decorate, and it just was risky. And then somebody mentioned in the comments that I should get an RV, right? And even the very first time that I heard it, and I think the young lady who mentioned that I should get an RV was in the comments yesterday, but the thought of it was just ridiculous to me. It was ridiculous, and I didn't know how to do it. I was like, an RV. I really wanted an apartment. I wanted to be able to stay in LA, and then somebody else mentioned it. I would say about 3 people mentioned it before I started to listen. And then I started thinking, okay, how can I get this done? How can I buy an RV? So then instead of looking for a place, which would have been really risky, I decided that I would get like one of those bus RVs, like the single ones. And I was in negotiations with this place. And I would say that this was around this time. It was about May, June at this time. And then this place I was working on getting the RV with this place, and when they brought it out, like the day that I was supposed to like sign the paperwork and stuff, they brought the RV out and like stuff started falling out the bottom of the RV, and I was like, what in the world is going on here? And they were like, oh, that's just the generator. And then they opened up the front and there was nothing in there. I don't know what it was, but I decided not to go that route, and I decided that I wanted something a little newer. And then I decided that I was going to I started looking into travel trailers, but I didn't have a way to tow the travel trailer because I had a smaller car at the time. And then so we're getting to the end of the story now. I around June-ish, July, I discovered instead of staying in my car, I could stay in a tent. So then I discovered, I could be on like RV parks and stay in a tent, and I got a membership to this RV place, and I stayed in my tent. That way I could stretch out, not be in the car. I was out in the wilderness. And what else? And so that was that. I was in the process of buying the RV. I found the RV that I wanted around August. And they said that it would be around July. They said that it would be available August because I remember I spent my birthday still displaced. And I don't know, there was something about that I just started to deteriorate. It broke me. I stopped doing the Displacement of the Dream Diaries around May because I ended up getting into a car accident with my car before this one. I got into a car accident, and I felt like my energy was attracting like a lot of drama. And so I stopped doing the displacement of the dream diaries. I really started focusing on, like, this was not a joke, this wasn't a game. I really needed to get out of this situation. So nonetheless, so August, I was supposed to have this RV right here. It wasn't ready. It was actually made from the factory. It didn't come in time. Then they kept pushing it back a month and then another month. And then before we know it, October had come. And then they offered me a better deal on a newer one because they said that it wasn't going to be available. So they offered me a better deal on a newer one if I could just wait until October, whatnot. And so I was like, okay, I'll wait till October. And by October, my energy had changed. I had been in a situation too long. I shifted into a different person. And long story short, my RV was finally ready December. So I spent from February till December living in my car. And when I finally got out of the car, something broke inside of me. Something fractured, I'd say, because it's not broken. Maybe it just needed to be broken away. Let me get into the FAQ now so that we could finish up this video. Okay. So, why did you close TKO Skin? I said that in the early part of the video. I wasn't happy. I wasn't living. I was alive, but I wasn't living. And I wanted to live. I wanted to live my dream. Could I have returned to New York? I could have returned to New York. Yes, I could have. I could have returned to New York. In hindsight, yeah, I could have returned to New York. However, I think that it should make special mention, special note of what may have existed in where I left from, that I would rather live in my car than go back. So I didn't have anywhere to stay in New York, and the quote unquote I would have rather lived in my car, and I did. So let's see, what did I spend the money on? I spent the money on the travel trailer, and I needed to get a truck to pull the travel trailer. So I spent the money on that. Why did I continue to stay in my car after I received the money? I was afraid that if I used, because the hotels out here are expensive. Look it up on Travelocity, like $100 a night. And $100, you can only, even every night, the money would have gone really quickly, and I was deathly afraid of the money going and not being out of the situation. So there were from time to time that I did treat myself to, a few days in a hotel, but it wasn't a solution. Even the Airbnbs out here are really expensive. So for people who are outside of California, it's hard to imagine. Even I wouldn't have imagined how expensive they are. One of the biggest questions that caused a lot of controversy was, do you own a house in the Bronx? I'm going to say unequivocally, no, I do not own a house in the Bronx. And it was this issue right here that made me not talk about this in videos, because it has to do with people other than myself and situations outside of me that has to do with my family dynamic, my father and his wife, my mother, her dying, and all of that stuff that has nothing to do with me. And it wasn't anything that I felt comfortable talking about at the time, because it was not, I didn't feel comfortable talking about it at the time. And it's what's going on with that situation really is not Tonya TKO's public's business. That's their business. And so it's like, if I'm talking to you, you're having a conversation with me. I cannot speak for other people outside of the conversation. And if there's anybody who needs more information than that, I don't really know what to tell you about that. I can tell you unequivocally, no, I do not own a home. If I owned a home, I would have, please. I would be, why wouldn't I be in my home? Even if I were renting it out. So I think it's like we really have to look at, you know how we talk about arbitals, reading between the lines? We really have to read between the lines. What is a person saying and expressing when they say, listen, rather than involve myself in this, I would rather live in my car. I will sleep in my car and face the dangers of being out here rather than doing XYZ. So we have to really read between the lines on that one. We talked about other scammers. Really, other people scamming has nothing to do with me and my 8-year history and career on YouTube. Was I selling ass? That's so silly. I didn't even want to address that. If I were a prostitute of some sort or selling ass, if that were an option for me, I wouldn't have been in my car. Shoot, big as this booty is. And last question, why didn't I get a job? When you're a lifetime entrepreneur like I am, don't have you don't have work history, you don't have a resume, you don't even know how to get a job. Your mind doesn't even work in job realm. There are things that I've had to do since then to work and make money. But still my mind just, I don't know, like, and I would get a full-time job if it were in alignment energetically. Like, I'm very energy sensitive. That's part of the reason that I could not stay in just anyone's house. And because I'm so clairsentient and I'm clairvoyant, I know when the direction that I'm going in is not in alignment with my life path. And so it feels so, I don't know if you've ever scraped your knee against the ground, like energetically it feels like I'm being dragged across the ground, like the friction energetically of not going in the direction that I need to go in is so profound. It's almost crippling. I can't do anything outside of alignment of where it is that I am, which is in where I'm going in my life path. So those are all the questions. I hope I answered everything. I wouldn't mind doing one more follow-up video. This is a long video, so anybody who's really interested in knowing and they watch the video, if you have follow-up questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I am going to unhide all of my old videos and come back into myself. Remember when I said that during all of that, something changed inside of me? I feel different. I do. I feel different. And I recognize myself again. Life is very interesting. I'm telling you, the biggest parts, I would say the biggest parts really are, the biggest parts really are, you can do anything if you can psychologically, if you can be in a space psychologically to be able to endure, to withstand. But when that part begins to deteriorate, it becomes difficult. When your perspective shifts, like our whole lives are created of our perspective. And so on that note, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for asking the questions. And I love you all. I love you. Thank you for riding with me. Thank you. And let's see where we're going from here. My book is complete. I got my energy and my psyche strong and back up. So let me hug you all and get out of here. Love, 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 love. Go out there and love one another. Most importantly, love yourself. Make sure you subscribe to my videos here. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, all over the internet. Subscribe to my personal mailing list. Get my book. Contribute to my Patreon. And I will see you all in the next video. Peace.